I'm Peter Carmen. I'm the pastor at Lake Avenue Baptist Church. It's a pleasure to have you here. I've met some of you, and not most of you. I've been asked to just very briefly frame why we're here and what we're up to today, and then not take too much time away from the rest of what we have going. But I thought I'd give you an outline of what we're hoping to do today. Somebody's going to introduce the St. Patrick's Four who knows them better. Okay.
Thank you. And I'd like to start by introducing, if any of you don't know Harry Murray. Harry, can you raise your hand so we know who you are? Thank you. I know he's well known, but there may be one or two people here who haven't met Harry before. Harry's a professor of sociology from Nazareth College and one of our shining lights in the peace movement. And he was arrested last year when President Bush came to town. Harry had a sign, correct me if I'm wrong, Harry, did your sign say the Iraq War is a sin?
The occupation is a sin.
The occupation is a sin. And Harry went past the police barriers and tried to kneel in the road, or was kneeling in the road, in a place where they didn't want him. And they pulled him over into a prone position, and then they said he was arrested for lying in the road after they pulled him down. So Harry and Sister Grace, who was also there and may join us this afternoon, were arrested and went through trial. And in the end, they were acquitted. Do you want to say anything about that, Harry, how that turned out?
The police officer who arrested us had a heart attack and therefore could not testify for months. And so basically they sort of dropped the charges at that point.
So Harry doesn't stop there, of course, as we all know who know Harry. Thanks, Harry. I'd like to go on. This is Teresa Grady, sitting here, and she's one of 5 of the Grady family of Ithaca, New York. And they have been active in the peace movement for years and years. Her parents were active. Her father was arrested as part of the Camden 28 at the time of the Vietnam War, and they did what to the draft files? He was subsequently imprisoned.
Actually, he was arrested and they were held for a couple of weeks, and then they went to trial about 2 years later. Very severe charges. There's a community member here in Rochester, Bob Good, who is one of the co-defendants of my dad. Anyone knows him. They went to trial and they were acquitted. They were looking at 45 years in jail for destruction of government property and many more charges, conspiracy, etc. But they were actually acquitted, so they never spent any more time in jail.
Thank you. Teresa's mother is also a peace activist, Teresa Grady Sr. And I remember the story, I hope I have it right, that every time one of her new grandchild was born, Teresa Sr. would go over the fence at the Seneca Army Depot, which was then the repository of nuclear weapons. So she's been tremendously active and still is active against war. This is Peter Mott, and Peter comes from a very large family. Is it about? 9 children. Peter lost a brother recently who was a missioner in Peru with the same community in Peru, a Maryknoll missioner, as Father Kurt Cataret. Some of you may know him from the U of R, a tremendous teacher there. And Peter has been in both the Marines during the Vietnam War and then later the Army, then spent a year in the seminary, and subsequently married, and is the father of 4 girls ranging in age from 21 to 4. And his wife Ellen is working in homeopathic cures, medicine. So they are long-term peace people, tremendously dedicated.
Well, I would like to say a few words about my involvement in the St. Patrick's Corps and my motivation, the kind of frame of reference from which I was coming, and I guess Jan in her introduction mentioned that I'm a veteran, both the United States Marine Corps and the Army. I arrived in Vietnam on the 8th of December of 1968 and was there for 51 weeks. I left on the 30th of November of '69, so I was there for about 1 week shy of a year. And so I participated in that war, and I know firsthand that war only begets more war, that war is organized mass murder, and that it doesn't really solve anything. It just makes the likelihood of an enduring peace coming about all the more difficult. So I went in the build-up to the war in Iraq. You know, just my personal experience of having been in Vietnam was very motivational for me in that it inspired me and it kind of morally compelled me to speak out in a nonviolent way and say, no, this war must not happen, and I'm willing to put my body in the way of the war and its actualization in any nonviolent way that I can. And Danny mentioned that we had gone to this local recruiting station, and it was for both the Marine Corps and the Army. After I got out of the Army, out of the Marine Corps rather, I was out for about a year, and then joined the Army to become a linguist, and was actually sent to the language school in Monterey, California, and studied Turkish for a year. But so I have about 4.5 years of military experience in the Army and about not quite 3 years in the Marine Corps. So, but my military background was very influential for me to help me to speak out against the war.
My action was, I guess, my parents' teaching, and then that coming, of course, from their faith in the teachings of Christ. And the basic premise is to love one another. That's it. It's pretty fundamental, and most faiths and traditions carry that with it. That same call and command to care for one another. And this teaching, bringing us again, Peter said so beautiful, you know, all people are made in the image and likeness of God. And how, if that's so, how is it that we can come to destroy one another, or even allow for injustice to take place with one another? I grew up, the idea that you must cultivate peace is very important, and that peace doesn't just happen when you find yourself on the brink of war or in the midst of war. What do? It's to be cultivated every day as you get up, as you interact with one another, as you relate to one another. And that being said, it's how we are in the world. Okay, so peace is about being in the world with one another, and being with one another and loving one another. And so as we were coming upon that time back in March of '03, we had friends in Ireland who had hammered on a U.S. warplane at Shannon Airport, which is an international civilian airport. Actually in February of '03, they had gone and hammered on an airplane which had just been fixed from the previous week, where a single woman had gone and hammered on this very U.S. warplane that was refueling in Shannon Airport. And the Irish people were up in arms because their constitution says that they they're basically a neutral country. They're not to participate in any wars, and that is even to refuel a plane that is going off the theater of war, or to aid in the transport of troops. And this airport seems to be making money off of the transport of U.S. troops going off to war in the Middle East. And so the people of Ireland had been digging up the airstrip, have been going on the air into the airport quite a bit, and at this point they did quite a bit of damage to this U.S. warplane.